So, hello, welcome. So, today I am with you with a new video, and I am in Beijing Normal University, and we are lucky enough to have a worthy professor over here. I would like him to introduce himself to you.
My name is Vance, Randall. I'm a professor of education policy at Brigham University in the state of Utah, United States.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have seen your presentation and you talked about the drop in private sector enrollments in your country, and you showed the data that from 1959 today, the private school enrollments has actually dropped as compared to the public sector schools. So, in Pakistan, the situation is different. The private sector is on the rise, and we have more public schools as compared to like 1960 or 70. So I want to understand that what were the things that your government did to reduce the private sector role and to increase the public sector role there.
Okay. The context of the presentation was on private schools in Hong Kong, not the United States. And in Hong Kong, the drop in enrollment in private secondary schools in the 1970s and 80s was a result of the government having more funds to build more secondary schools and therefore to enroll more secondary students. So that was in the Hong Kong context. In the United States, private school enrollment is about 10 to 12%. It fluctuates a little bit of the total enrollment of K through 12 students in private schools. And so that's kind of remained the same.
So you talked about more funds, and you told that how in Hong Kong the government actually invested more funds in public sector and attracted more students towards the public sector schools, and the private school shares actually dropped. But in Pakistan, even though the funds are sufficient, and this year alone we had 8.2 billion budget in education sector, which is equivalent to our mighty military budget. But the situation is not changing. The public sector is still failing, and even this year government has privatized many of the public schools, right? And they have rented out their buildings. So what else apart from the funding is needed to be done by the governments to change this trend in Pakistan of the rise in private sector enrollment?
There's kind of two factors with funding. One is the total amount of funding, like in Pakistan, $8.2 billion. Just as important, if not more so, is how are the funds being used by the education officials, the principals, the teachers in schools. How money is used is often more important than how much is made available. Perhaps what's going on in Pakistan is there is little motivation for those who work in the public sector and public schools to do things differently, to help students learn better, learn faster. There's no motivation to change how they're doing education. The funds are always there, regardless of what they do or don't do. So why change?
That's a very valid point, and as the professor actually mentioned, that only funds are not enough. There is dire need of strong motivation, or there shall be a system of reward and punishment for the better performing teachers and the low performing teachers. In public sector, as all of you know, that if you are hired, there is no way to kick you out, and that is what he said very politely, that actually the system of punishment and reward is not present, and the bureaucracy or the public sector is using the funds, but they are not motivated to perform more or to perform good. Sir, what do you think that in Pakistan, what the world today, what are the needs and what are the requirements which the world wants today in a student, in a graduate student? What, as a professor, when a student comes to you and apply for your supervision or whatever, what are the traits that you see in a student And what shall our universities produce in Pakistan? That is very much needed.
But before we go on that, different topic. But on the previous one, I think he is right. Because motivation is important factor. And because their jobs are secure and they are getting very high pay. They are highly paid in the sector, seniors. And building the market as such, their facilities are okay. But they don't have motivation. And probably the government has started doing punishment. But that is not such that it can lead to this motivation. So they don't see any challenge. They are just doing routines. And eventually I think the whole organization is going to help. And that's the problematic thing. And the main thing is that the political will is completely lacking. Governments think that if private sector comes upfront and takes responsibility, it's better off. That's kind of political will which is lacking, and that's creating a problem. But on the other part, government school is the only home for the poor people. The only home. And as a teacher, I'm really scared what will happen to those children. We already have 16 children who are out of school. And I fear the number will increase because they will not be able to afford the private school, which is higher than their and there is no check on that. It's true that they are providing good quality education, but to whom? That's an important question. And the quality cannot go without equity. That's like day and night. They have to go together.
You might want to consult the work of Peter Tooley, Tooley, who's done a lot of research on private schools that are attended by the poorest of the poor, both in India, in Africa, and he's done a little bit of research in Latin America.
Okay, Professor Hameed has mentioned that the challenge of private school rise, another challenge that is coming up is that more private school means that more people have to pay for their education, and there is no free education in private sector. And he has rightly mentioned that the next challenge will be that while we have about 600 million children, those are out of school, the rise of private sector will create another challenge for us, is to educate the poor with the quality. So while Professor Allen, he has actually discussed that there are some ways, and he has mentioned some research about how the poorer can also attend the private sector schools in India and in South Asia and some other countries.
We are expecting few of these from it. For example, we expect experiment of hypothesis. We have a lot of new experiment going on, which is probably pushing private schools a little bit and attaching this that you need to take schools from poor families, and before you apply for the funding. So they are making sure, but the proportion is very less, it's about 5 to 10%. Even the Free and Compulsory Education Act of the Punjab is recently that. They say that private schools, if they admit 5 to 10% students from poor families, they are okay. So I don't think the private sector has capability to bear the burden of that. We have poverty like 30% poverty, people living below the poverty line. These are the realities. And I don't think any private sector can be so good that even married to educate every child. You need money to do that.
That's a good point. Now, what Hong Kong has done is the government has partnered with private schools, provided more government aid to private schools to enable private schools to teach children.
We are doing the same thing.
Yeah, let me share this case with you. In Pakistan, we have in Punjab province we have Punjab Education Foundation. Right, that is a public sector foundation, and that foundation, what the foundation is doing, it is paying the private schools, right, in the name of education vouchers, about 600 rupees to 800 rupees per student to those private schools who are of good quality, and asking them that you will teach them free, and you will teach them free, and we will pay you the fee.
Yes.
Right? So that is, as the Professor Hameed said, that is another model that is being practiced in Pakistan these days. But you are very much right that there are limitations of this scheme also, right? Because we have 600 million out of school children. So to bring those 600 million out of school children back to school, that is a big challenge, and the public sector needs to have some serious planning on that, and there must be a motivation as
Moreover, they are not in the village. They are mostly in their prairie private schools.
See, it appears in Pakistan, and you know the context better than I do, that the public sector cannot do it by itself. We've got 6 million children who are not being educated. The private sector by itself cannot do it. So what kind of partnership can you create with the public and private working together? And there's this kind of maybe synergy takes place where they're able to accomplish together more than what they could just accomplish individually. That might be,
and very good. And we will end our discussion on this, and this point is very much important, that there is a dire need of synergy, there is a dire need of a cooperation between public and private sector to bring those 6 million out of children back to school. I thank Professor Allen and Professor Hameed for talking, and very much, this discussion was very much informative, and it gave you and provided you a lot of solutions for the challenges of private sector rise in Pakistan. Thank you so much, Professor.
You're welcome.
You will send you the video.
Please.
Email.